Thank you. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody online as well. Shortly here, I will go into prayer. That will be followed by 2 minutes of silence, and then we'll be brought back by the sounds of the oyster shuckers, or whatever they're called today. So, for today, anyways. So please enter into prayer with me. Breathing in, breathing out. I know that there is one inexhaustible, ineffable singularity that permeates and saturates this entire existence. The inhalation and the exhalation of the universe is that one. It demonstrates as wisdom, light, love, understanding, and as the endless flow of good in my life. I witness this in the way the soil negotiates with winter through frost and fracture, so that spring may emerge, so that new life may be realized. It is in the Sunday skies, the gull cries, and the broken rhymes. It is that which is infinite and eternal, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. And within this recognition is the truth that I am not separate from the divine. No, I am and have always been one with that divine presence, deeply impressed within God. My soul is God's soul. My life is that of the divine. And I know that there is nothing that I need to do to seek this outside of myself. There's no threshold that I need to cross, no title that could be bestowed upon me, no third-party representative that could connect me to Source. And this unification holds true for everyone here as well. No one could be left out of this awareness. It is eternal for them as well. Their very presence in this life is the utterance of the divine. Each one here is a holographic representation of God in these physical bodies. And I know that that flow of good is always moving endlessly in, through, and as each one here. And so I speak my word for this community. In whatever capacity they are here with us today, whether in person or remote, I know that this music deeply resonates within all in a holy, holy way. That the words of Reverend David inspire each one towards right thought, right speech, and right action. And I declare that the totality of this service brings forth an epiphanic experience into everyone's life. That we can all rest easy, knowing that this now moment in togetherness, as a community of unique expressions of God, is all good, because that is its nature, all good. This is the realization that I have for this spiritual community. And so I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this word. I'm grateful for this truth, for this time spent in communion with God and with one another. And so I lovingly release this word into the law, knowing that it is done, knowing that it has made its impression upon the consciousness of Christ, upon the mind of Buddha. And I simply say, and so it is.
So we're looking at a year-long theme of living out loud. Living out loud, living ourselves fully. This month we're looking at curiosity as a superpower. And so, and I have to say, I did not write these talk titles, okay? This was done by a faraway committee that was done by the Home Office. Okay, so I'm the co-chair of that committee. What can I say? But I didn't pick this talk title today, but I love it. The woman who did it is a wonderful minister named Beverly Strutt, who lives in Hawaii. And so she has a lot of kind of watery themes in her talks. So today is the world is an oyster, and I decided to start off with a couple of quotes about oysters. The Scottish writer, who's been by a pen name Saki, S-A-K-I, said, "Oysters are more beautiful than any religion. There's nothing in Christianity or Buddhism that quite matches the sympathetic unselfishness of an oyster." Another Hector, because that was the other guy's first name, Hector Bolithos said, "Oysters stay in bed all day and all night. They never work or take exercise. They're stupendous drinkers and wait for their meals to come to them." That sounds like a pretty good lifestyle. And then, of course, the most famous quote of the oyster comes from Shakespeare in The Merry Wives of Windsor. "Why then, the world's mine oyster, which I with sword will open." So the official talk today uses the oyster in the metaphor of the oyster taking an irritant and turning it into a pearl, using its own essence to do so, which is a wonderful lesson for us to learn, because how many of us have irritants in our lives? Some of us might be even sitting next to one. I'm just teasing. It's a wonderful practice for us to use the essence, our spiritual essence, and turn that irritant, that circumstance, into a pearl, into something that is beautiful and a pearl of great price and of great wisdom. But I want to use the oyster metaphor today in a couple of other ways. So first, if we observe the oyster. By the way, this is known as a blue pearl oyster. That's the variety of it. So if we were to say, get down and worship the blue oyster, we might be known as the blue pool oyster cult. But we're not going to do that today. What was that? Yep. So first, the structure of the oyster is a hard shell. Yes? The outer structure consists of a hard shell surrounding a soft inner being. How many of us know people like that? In fact, we're all a little like this, aren't we? We have areas that we have shelled off that are the softness to protect our softness. We have this hard protective shell which accumulates inch by inch, layer by layer over time. And this shell is our outer facing to the world appearance. Yes? It's what we show the world oftentimes. The appearance of the oyster shell makes it look like the river or the seabed that it's in, so it's invisible to predators, or at least not attractive to predators. It just kind of sits on the seabed or the riverbed bottom, and most things don't look for it. Maybe a few seagulls. I understand starfish really like oysters. Our shells do the same. They protect us from harm, whether it's real harm, whether it's perceived harm, or even just feared harm. And sometimes we build that shell so strong that we can't reach out of it, right? And we get trapped in it. And having that shell is good until we want to access the living essence, our living essence, only to find it covered over with years and years of protective layers. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. And often, it takes something like an external force. The sword. Let's do that one. Just a minute here. Thank you, thank you. We'll have a little oyster opening music. Some people's shells are harder to open than others. Some of our own shells are harder to open than others. We get really attached to them with a nice strong muscle, only to reveal the softness within, the living essence of who we are within. Where we find the sympathetic unselfishness as we open to ourselves. And then life Adds a little tartness. How many of you have a little tartness in life? And then it adds a little spiciness so that life isn't boring. Yes? Haven't gotten any yet. There we go. And I left my fork at home. Oh.
I'll help.
And so then it becomes one with the greater beingness of life. Yes. The metaphor of the oyster. To participate in life more fully is what we're called to be doing. Ernest Hemingway, by the way, describes the result of eating oysters washed down with a little wine. This is actually water, okay? I'm going to turn it into wine. In my imagination. And he talks about eating oysters washed down with wine, and he said, I lost the empty feeling that I had and began to be happy and to make plans. That's from A Movable Feast. What's that?
Might have been the wine.
Could have been the wine. But no, he was pretty descriptive of the oysters and their taste and all that. So are we willing to stretch ourselves to open up a little more of ourselves? And, one of my teachers always said, the moth goes toward the flame. But when the moth reaches the flame, there is no more moth. When we open to spirit, we cease to be the oyster. We become spirit. We become the bigger thing. We are consumed by and become a part of the greater life. Yes? And we'll talk in a minute about whether we lose our identity completely, which we don't. So the final metaphor I want to use with the lowly oyster is something I referred to last Sunday, which is as we expand our superpower of curiosity. It's good to have some structure. It's good to have some structure because almost everything in nature has structure in some form or another. And whether it's the little paper-thin tunic that surrounds a tulip bulb, or whether it's the hard shell of a nut or an oyster, everything has some sort of a shell, an outer shell, in order for safe growth and for direction. Think of a river. It has a banks, right, that it goes through, that channel it. If you don't have a riverbank, you have just a kind of a spread out marsh that goes nowhere and eventually just evaporates. In our teaching, we have a structure. We're not the church of whatever, right? Yeah, whatever. So in 1927, Ernest Holmes wrote a statement, 13-point statement of what I believe. Published it in the 1927, the very first issue of Science of Mind magazine. And it's become taken as and retitled What We Believe. And so I'd like to share that structure with you, a little bit about it. And this isn't an oyster shell hardness sort of belief system. It's not, you must believe this or else. It's not that. It's closer to the tunic of the tulip that simply expresses Holmes' belief as an invitation to ask ourselves what is ours, to consider them and decide if they're close to our own beliefs. Okay? And so without the structure of knowing what we ourselves believe, we can get a little marshy. Yes? So, I want to walk through all 13 points for a couple minutes here, a few minutes. And it starts off with, we believe in God, the living Spirit, Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. I'll say it again. We believe in God. By the way, our God, for those of you who are relatively new, is not the big guy in the sky. You'll kind of catch this as we go. We believe in God, the living Spirit, Almighty, one, indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. And so this one is a oneness. I actually prefer to call it, rather than the oneness, because it moves us beyond a something that's a one to a concept of oneness itself. And it is a unity. Whatever is true of it at one point is true of it at all points, simultaneously. Yes? Okay. He goes on to say this one manifests itself in and through all creation but is not absorbed by its creation. Everything in the creation is the expression of this divine, and yet it's more. It's more. Blaise Pascal, a French philosopher, said, "The visible universe is but an atom in the bosom of nature." I'd mentioned he was a French mathematician and philosopher, 1600s. Everything we can see, every part of the visible universe, and then beyond, is still just an atom. All we can think is really just atoms in the infinite presence. Think how big that is, and then you're too small still. The one manifests itself in through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. Think of a painter who paints a painting, puts their heart and soul into the painting, but they are not the painting. They are expressing the painting through them. He goes on to say, the manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. In my belief system, the purpose of life is for the infinite to know itself, to experience and express itself. See, if you're just a oneness, you're hanging out, you can't experience love. You can't experience, because you are love. It's like being in a whiteout. You can't see anything else but white. Yes? So the infinite wants to experience itself. And here we are, the infinite experiencing itself. All the stuff that we like and dislike, it's still all the infinite experiencing itself. It's the infinite self-knowingness of God. The second point, we believe in the incarnation of the Spirit in everyone, and that all people are incarnations of the one Spirit. And if he was writing that today, he would probably be a little more expansive in his inclusiveness and say all of life. All of life is an incarnation of the one Spirit. So yes, that person who's an irritant, guess what? They're God too. I'm sorry. But they are. And then the person you look at in the mirror every day, they're God too. I think we had that in the opening song that we did. Take a look at the person next to you. Say, the God in me recognizes the God in you. Third point, we believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. So there is that within us, and I know you know this, which is more than just our body, yes? We have a body, but we are not just our body. It's a wonderful way to kind of get to know each other. I like a body because I can taste chocolate with my body. We can hug people with our bodies. We can breathe in beautiful air. We can eat oysters with our bodies. So it's wonderful to have them, but we're more than that. In the Hindu philosophy, in the Bhagavad Gita, it describes that bodies are like clothes, a suit of clothes we put on, and when we're finished with them, take off, and find a new suit of clothes to put on and take off. And so there is that within us which is forever and ever renewing, forever and ever ongoing. Ernest Holmes once said that I've met too many people at their own funerals to believe that anybody dies. And I myself have had experiences with people who had left the earthly plane but showed up. And probably many of you have had something similar to that. And we know that there's this individual soul forever and ever expanding. So when I'm sitting there stuck with, should I just lay down and quit and not learn anything more? It's like, no, my soul is expanding. I'm here to get all the lessons I can within this body, right? So I'm as expanded as I can be going into the next. Yes? We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. Jesus said the kingdom of hand is here now, at hand. The kingdom of heaven is not someplace we go to when we die, where we get to play a harp with God or whatever. How boring. Do you ever find that idea of heaven that many of you grew up with boring? I mean, no? I don't know, sitting playing a harp for eternity. As many of my friends said, I'd rather go to hell, all my friends will be there, and we'll have a lot more fun, you know? But we don't believe in either of those as physical places. We believe in heaven and hell as a state of consciousness. Heaven is when we know our oneness with the divine, and we feel it and experience it. And hell is when we feel separate from our oneness with the divine. It doesn't mean we are separate, because we can't ever be separate, yes? But I've heard that there are people who once in a while feel separate from that. Bet you some are in this room. I'll bet you one's right here on this stage. So we feel separate from that. But he says that heaven is within us, and that we experience it to the degree we become conscious of it. So what are we working on? Becoming more conscious of the heaven that we are already within, and that is already within us. We believe that the ultimate goal of life is to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. How many? All. We're all going to get there. Not necessarily in this physical body's lifetime, yes? But if we're part of a soul that's ever and ever, forever and ever and ever expanding, see, if the infinite wants to experience itself, part of the experience of how do I experience love is I have to learn what not love is, yes? Yes. If I want to know what joy is, I have to learn what not joy is. And so we have all the stuff we see happening in the world today, and by the way, that has been happening for millennia. Today we just have a particular, version of it, but it was happening. Dickens wrote, 200 years ago? It's the best of times, worst of times. And 200 years from now, somebody will be writing the same thing. So we have all this stuff as the Spirit, the infinite presence is knowing all aspects of itself. And yet, there's this assurance that we will wake up from this dream. We will expand beyond this consciousness. We're sure to be free. We're just actors on a stage playing. Yes? Yes. We're having fun. I was reading somebody the other night who had played a villain in a movie, and they said it was really fun to stretch my imagination and do things that I would not normally do, and play that role. And so sometimes we get people playing villains, yes? And some of them are pretty good at it. And we get people playing heroes, and then we get people trying to pretend it's not happening, and in the audience, let me just ignore that, The purpose of life is that we will be free of discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. He goes on then, we believe in the unity of all life, and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. There's no God out there that we're separate from. It's all one. Hi, you're in God right now. God's in you right now. This whole infinity, I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson who said, I am in the universe and the universe is in me. That is true of our physical bodies, literally, but it's also true spiritually. I'm in the universe and the universe is in me. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. So there's this idea, we talk about all is love and all is law. And love is the infinite nature, beingness of God. God is love. Yes? Okay. I remember the New Thought writer Emily Cady woke me up one time when I first read it years ago. She said, God is not loving. That is, God is not a being that is loving. God is love itself. We can never be outside of it. Again, we can forget it, but we are never truly actually outside of it. So we have this universe that acts impersonally through the law. In other words, and by impersonally, it's just simply, it treats everybody the same. It works the same for everybody. When Jesus says the rain falls on the heads of the just and the unjust alike, he's talking about that. He's talking about that this good that God is, this expression that God is impersonal. It doesn't care. The sun shines on it. It doesn't care whether we're good boys or bad boys, right? Or good girls or bad girls. Yes? Okay. It's just being the sun. It's just doing what it does. God is just being. It doesn't care whether I'm good or bad. Whether I follow this rule or don't follow this rule. Boy, that's a different thing than I was raised with, yeah? So it acts impersonally, and yet it's also deeply personal if we are willing to be in touch with that. It's personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. This is why we practice things like meditation, is to feel that, to allow ourselves to be present with that indwelling presence. To take a few moments to do that. Let's take a moment. I invite you to take a breath. We're going to do another one of those little two-part mantras. And on the in-breath, I am, and I invite you to have the I am being not just you personally, but the I amness. And then on the out-breath, here. And so join me, we'll do this 3 times. I am here. I am here. I am here. It grounds us in the recognition that God is present, wearing a skin suit that's yours, but the I am is right here. We believe in the direct revelation of truth, that's a capital T truth, through the intuitive and spiritual nature of the individual, and that any person may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. As Tim said in his opening prayer, we don't need somebody else to interpret God for us or to communicate God for us, to be an intermediary between us and God. This teaching is all about have a direct experience of the divine. Your direct experience. And guess what? Yours will be a little bit different than yours, and yours, and yours. We will each have unique personal experiences, but any of us can become a revealer of truth and a knower of truth. And revealer of truth simply means I can reveal this truth in my day-to-day life. Doesn't necessarily mean I have to write big books, and have them be, hit the New York Times bestseller list. In fact, they probably won't, if we really tell the truth. It's simply to allow ourselves to be in touch with that divine and allow that truth to emerge from that experience. So we believe in the direct revelation of truth through the intuitive and spiritual nature of the individual. And so we want to develop our intuition. We want to develop our time spent in spiritual nature, in spiritual practice. Next, we believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. So there is this infinite presence, and it acts through this thing called the law, this process called the law, and we are constantly creating an impress, a mold in the law by our thoughts. Yes? What I think is what shows up as reality in my life. It doesn't necessarily show up as the great capital R reality, but it looks real to me. Yes? So if I believe in sickness, guess what's going to show up in my life? I've got this little thing that we would label a cold, trying to convince me that it's real. And so I'm sitting knowing the absolute truth of the divine, that there is this life energy, this aliveness, this wholeness, and that the divine knows nothing of disease. I'm making sure that that's the truth of what I know for myself. So we believe that God operates through a universal mind, capital M mind, which is the law of God. And that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the impress of our thoughts and acts upon it. When does it do this, by the way? Always. All the time. It's always receiving that impress, always acting upon it. So what's our process? Pay attention, yes? Be aware of what I'm thinking. We believe in the healing of the sick through the power of this mind. Now, some people read that and say they're through the power of my mind. That's not what he said at all. It's this capital M mind. We believe in the healing of the sick, and the next one, by the way, is we believe in the control of conditions through the power of this mind. Conditions is this stuff out there. If I am in alignment with this infinite mind, stuff shifts. Because what's known at one point in the mind is known at all points in the mind. And so therefore, as I hold something and as I truly know it, this is not just a surface thought, okay? This is the real, I am becoming this, I'm aware that I already am this health, I already am this love, I already am this joy, I already am this wealth, I already am this creativity. And as I really know that, that's what shows up more and more and more in my life. So we believe in the healing of the sick and the control of conditions by using the power of this mind. And we do get to use it. It's just there for us to use. We believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. Again, the rain or the sun shines on the heads of all of us. And then finally, we believe in our own soul, our own spirit, our own destiny. For we understand that the life of all is God. So this is our structure. You can find this, by the way, on the website, under, I believe it's About Us, what we believe. You can look it up, say, okay, yes, I do. I'm not sure about that one. I've got questions. Or, yeah, this really summarizes what I believe. A lot of people walk into a center like this for the first couple times and go, I didn't know anybody else was believing what I believed. A lot of us have come to this, something similar to that on our own, yes? Okay. We've heard other things that say, God's this way or that way, and we say, no, that doesn't feel right. And so that leads us oftentimes to, so what is God? So I invite you to take a look at that. This can be part of our practice. So this is the structure that guides our teaching. The important thing is not to memorize it. The important thing is to ask, what do I believe? What is my structure? What is it that guides my life? Ultimately, this teaching is about each person deepening their awareness with spirit within, releasing the old shells of belief that don't support our fullest expression, or as Buffy would say, our fullester expression, and allowing our true self to shine forth. That's what we're about. And as we truly shine forth, we enrich and feed the greater whole of life. Yes? That is our purpose. So this week, one practice, simply ask, what do I believe? Take some time. Sit down. What do I believe? Go to our website, use this for a guide if you want to, but just ask, what do I believe? What do I really believe? What is my structure? Is it freeing or is it limiting? Are we good with doing that practice, taking some time? I think it's very important for us to know what we believe. I'm going to close with a quote that comes from, it's a daily reader called 365 Days of Richer Living by Ernest Holmes and Raymond Charles Barker. And this particular reading says, the secret of self-mastery is a simple one. Don't you wish they told you that when you were in school? And don't we, as we go through life, sit there and go, no, that's not simple. But it's like, yes, it is simple. The secret of self-mastery is a simple one. It is the clear concept that creation begins and ends within the consciousness of the individual experiencing it. As Abraham Lincoln said, you're about as happy as you make up your mind to be. Mind, capital M mind, is the only cause, and law is the only process. The law does not work with our dreams and visions. The law works with what we really are. It brings forth into visibility our real understanding of ourselves. So if you want to understand what you really believe, look at the mirror of your life. With compassion. No mallets, no hammers. It's just, oh, look at that over there. That must be what I'm believing about that. Let me change that. Let me come to a deeper understanding of a truth. So we have an affirmation. If you'll say this with me. I use structure wisely and gently to guide my expression in the world. One more time. I use structure wisely and gently to guide my expression in the world. So it is. Take a breath. Look around at the faces of the divine. Remember that whose face is one of that? my own, our own. Find that place in our hearts. I'm going to do a slightly different prayer to close, because I know there are a number of people in our community who are experiencing health challenges. And so I'm going to remember that there's one life, one infinite presence, one good. That is all that there is. Whether we remember it or forget it is still all that there is. This life energy, this vibrant aliveness permeates, pulses through the universe, and because we are within the universe, because we are one of that, each of us is one of that life energy, that health, that wholeness, that vibrant aliveness. That this is the truth of our being. And so I speak my word that there is that within each person who is experiencing health challenges, and each and every one of us that knows that this is the truth of our being. We cast out the shadow or the idea of dis-ease because it is not present in the mind, the infinite mind that we call God, Spirit, oneness. There is only the wholeness. There is only the aliveness. There is only the good. And so every cell of our body, every atom, every subatomic particle, every space in between the subatomic particles, all of it is within the infinite presence. All of it is God in form. And so we vibrate along with and agree with, move into an alignment with that health, that wholeness, that life energy, that vibrancy. And allow this to infill everything that we know of and we call our bodies. Everything that we call our own minds, everything that we call our own existence is expression of the health, the wholeness, the vibrant aliveness of the divine. And like turning a light on in a dark room, that light simply illuminates our bodies. And everything that we might have called darkness simply just dissipates without struggle, without a fight, without conflict. It's just no longer there because it is simply the absence of light. And so I know that we are in alignment with the fullness of the divine. And in that knowing, in that awareness, I simply give thanks. I'm grateful for the health, the wholeness, and the vibrant aliveness of every single person here, every single person within the sound of my voice. I know this is the nature of God, and it expresses through the law, and we allow ourselves to experience and express this law of health, wholeness, and aliveness. It is done unto us as we believe, and so we believe, and it is done. And so it is.